Good afternoon. This is going to be an interesting topic. Um, from this past month, by a lot of the analysis um, from my own personal research on to the subject matter of conscience, conscientization, and the study of conscientological, which can eventually be open up a wonderful opening communication, not just the US alone, but the West and China. I think this is a huge cultural misunderstanding. Just very brief. Since the time of expansion of the global expansion by the Portuguese navigation and by the Spanish Empire, coming into the Americas, and by way of the another Portuguese navigator by the name of Fernand Magalhães, known as Magellan, who had gone on to have arrived into the islands called the Las Filipinas in the name of the Philip II from Spain when he was a prince, and all the vast territory of the Spanish Empire. If you can imagine, all the way from Portland, Oregon, from North America, all the way down to Peru and Chile, with the Spanish Empire covering the entire Pacific, plus the Caribbean, because Acapulco was the crossing, moving merchandise, Chinese silk, and other wares from into the Caribbean, and the Caribbeans in the use of the Veracruz and Havana, and eventually a huge portion of this Chinese material were transferred from Fujian, China to Manila, and from Manila to the New World of the Nueva España. And that become a huge story many have shared, called the Manila Galleon. And this is all about 250 years of the travel between the Asian controlled by the Spanish, and also their travel, sometimes of 6 months, carrying passengers over 500 plus a crew of 200 for the galleons. And this had also, the reason for me to bring this subject matter is because as of late, many of the American ethnic Chinese American teachers and professors are starting to paying more attention of the Chinese presence in the New World. As a matter of fact, between 1700s, 1800s, there were even Japanese immigrants who had arrived into Guadalajara and created, were involving in the making of the rum industry. And a lot of the Asian also came along into the Spanish world in New Spain, Mexico, because the slave they have gotten from the Asian side. Now there's a huge mix that can be the native Filipinos, but it seems to me in that part of Asia, in the Portuguese Goa, in the Portuguese India, and even from the wars in Indochina between Cambodia and Thailand, many captured slaves were sold to Manila to the Spanish groups. And many of the preference in the New World of these ethnic Asians slaves were in a higher preference because maybe the level of domestication, maybe what they brought along with some of their own culture, such as the Chinese. There was almost constantly, in any given time, 50% of the population in the city of Manila, outside of Manila, called Barrion, it basically almost sounds like Barrion with P, but Barrio is a region where the Chinese has settled, built their colony, including fabrication, replicating, and doing the Chinese work, embroidery into back the service the Manila to the Spanish ruling. At one time, it's almost like the heathens, the non-Catholics, were outside of the city of Manila. And the city of Manila basically is a replica copy of the Piazza in Mexico City. And so, but the subject matter, what had brought to my attention, well, before I go into that, one more factor, the landmass of Americas from Oregon to Peru to Chile, controlled by the Spanish Empire, and also one of the maybe secret trait. I mentioned secret because so many the subject matter we are sharing now is very open, is almost very transparent, as historians, narrators trying to bring out as much the past secrets. What makes us today more interesting, because what was secretive today can be open. But the secret business of the Portuguese navigation, how Portuguese giving up the island of the Canary Islands, they found, discovered, and ceded to the Spain so that they can protect their discovery into the coast of Africa. Imagine 1460s, 70s, before 1492, the Portuguese would have a good control of the region, and a city like Lagos, Nigeria, that means lakes in Portuguese, and Ghana. They refer Africa of that part by name of Guinea or Guinea. And also Portuguese already have settlements in the island in between the Africa and South America continent. The island now is disappeared, called Tristan da Cunha or Tristan da Cunha. When I was 14, traveling from China to Brazil, 1962, we actually have gone to that island, rescuing 3 British scientists, throwing net to the side of the boat, rescue, and then onward to Brazil, to Rios and Santos. That's just a part of the story. And eventually, the Portuguese got settled in the Fernando Noronha, another island in the basically on the outskirts of the mouth of the Amazon. To put more reading, I'm still reading on the book written by the Barreto, Maraqueñas, a Portuguese writing in 72. The Portuguese had already in the immediate region, the Madeira and the Azores. Madeira literally was found, quote unquote, another piece of gossip, by Columbus' maternal grandfather. Columbus supposed to be born in a city named Cuba in the region called Alentejo, and that is one of the few pieces now being shared by many. We're checking, we're exploring. Nothing is written in stone. With the potentially one of the DNA check, one of the crown prince of Spain married to the court of Portugal, and in that relationship, because Columbus' natural father is the Duke of Beja. The Duke of Beja is also the first cousin of King John II in Portugal. And the whole story goes, Columbus' mother is from the family named Zarco, Catalina Zarco. Zarco is one of the converted Jews. We call them conversos. And another Ferdinand Zarco, Z-A-R-C-O, was the explorer and the founder of the island of Madeira. And the bits and pieces, a lot of Columbus, no more Colón, was raised in that part of the world. But again, if we can open up and see all this complexity of the time and moment, the School of the Navigation by Henry the Prince happened to be in Sagres, southern part of Portugal, by name of in the area of Algarve. The secretive training, how they obtain compasses from the Arabs, from the northern Africa, and the creation of the caravelas, the speedboats of the Portuguese. There's so much material that we can all share and explore of this myth about Portuguese already landed into that part of West Africa, Ghana, Lago, Saint Tome, Cabo Verde. Okay, and one of my graded confidence, my personal assertion, is based on the Treaty of the Tordesillas in Spanish, Tordesilla, Tordesillas, but in Portuguese pronounced as Tordesillas. And look at the time frame of 1492. Look at 1497, 98. Vasco da Gama had already found Calcutta in India, and so was Asia. 1500, supposed to be by accident, Pedro Álvares Cabral, the founder of Brazil, had landed into Brazil. And in between the three discoveries in the Antilles and the islands Hispaniola, present-day Santo Domingos and Haiti, and the Cuba and the islands, all the islands in surrounding Cuba, Colombia named after all the vizinhança or the vizinho, all the cities near Cuba, Portugal, after all the many saints. That's another part of the evidence. But the most important things, the King John II is already a very old man, but in that 47, 49, 42, right, Columbus, in that three discovery, the Papa of our most the debauchery, the Borgia from Spain, Borges, maybe, and his name was Paulo VI, the Pope, wanted to make the clear cut in the middle of the Atlantic. Maybe that one of the indicators was Cape Verde, Cabo Verde, decided to go half or in the west of the Tordesillas, go to the Spanish, and everything in the east, Africa, namely, will go to Portugal. And the Portuguese fought like hell and wanted to have 300 plus leagues west of the Tordesillas, but which became the entire landmass of Brazil. So in this part of a mental, I use in conjugation, like conjugation grammar and composition in my mind, had given the indication that there's so many past intelligence, military intelligence, naval intelligence, geographic intelligence, the maps, the mighty maps of the polos, and from the Chinese side, there's a controversial somewhat about the map made by Matteo Ricci. Many of the Chinese thought Ricci made that map by having the Chinese portion of it, and then the other portion coming from Europe. But the story goes on, and I think this is what is fun. When we have open mind, we do our research, we conduct our studies, and bits and pieces, and that we can come up with a better understanding of the world we are in today. But my subject matter today, with my suspicion, again, is a pure hypothesis, because in recent years in China, in the last 10, 12, 15 years, involving with all the archaeological digs, as we all know, China, my business with the gemstones minerals have engaged with China since 1978. Our business opened up here in Wisconsin, in the U.S., 1977. But since then, reverting back from retail to wholesale to mining in Brazil, and with the working with the Chinese, I have my 45-year business in this area of the minerals and gems and collectibles globally, have connected me back to the development. My history of my business called China West is really also the latest, the economic revival of the Chinese since Deng Xiaoping's declaration in Shenzhen in 1979, something like that. But let me put it this way: but they had no money to do much of the digging that Chinese have now, like San Shengdui, as of late in Sichuan. And also, this brings up another cultural dimension where we have followed the oracle bones of this Shang dynasty I'm talking. But it seems to me we have ignored there's one group of ethnic minority by this name, by the sound of called Yi, Y-I. Well, it's simple. My last name is Y-I-H, have the same pronunciation. Y-I, whose written language can be extended much more beyond the 3,300 years since the time we found the Shang dynasty oracle bones. So China will have another archaeological and cultural anthropological studies just in the province of Sichuan alone, and where the San Shengdui were found. But let me just put this hypothesis. One of the most horrific found by me in the last couple of years, the Shang dynasty, number one, had close to a 600 plus, almost 700 years, following by the Zhou dynasty. But let me put Zhou dynasty first. For those of us who are fascinated with I call it the conscience culture of the Chinese, by Confucius, 500 BC, by Lao Tzu, which is an ecological conscience of the world, and coming from India by Buddha, by his known of the human compassion. The three masters and their influence to the entire Chinese people per se were all about the human conscience. Let me repeat, this is my area of interest. Conscience cannot be taught. The word conscience, you can find it in the Greek, almost as old as the Chinese and more. And where Socrates has said, I cannot teach anybody anything, but only to make them think. Conscience comes on from the cumulative use of human thinking, introspection, self-examination. The Greeks said it before. A life that's not examined, studied, is not worth living. The second point, conscience is about self-reflection, but collectively it's about collective reflection. The self-reflection, introspection is oneself, but collective reflection is what had we done right or wrong in the past. Now, this is part of the chemistry or the emotion, cognition, along with the latest Brazilian's emphasis about this congruence flow is affective domain, the affection, what is affecting the entire collectively Chinese psyche. But we don't use psyche is the only element. It's almost in the West, it's like psyche is up here, is the human cognition. The Chinese language is the language of the hearts. And I will face challenges, I will find debates, I will find arguments, but that's what one of the huge cultural dissonance, call it ignorance, because the West have no such vocabulary, not by the Western conquerors or conquest. The Romans were barbarians. When they dominated Egypt, surely for the product crops and grains to feed the Romans. We speak so much of the connectivity, the renaissance of the Rome between the Greco-Roman culture. Every one of their saints, or not saints, every one of their deity is identical to the Greeks except Apollo. They both call Apollo. Next point, with all these other cultures, the Greeks, the Aryans, or Babylonian, who had taken the Sumerian culture, very sophisticated, and their astrology, their written words in mud even. Barbarians come in to the two river culture of the Mesopotamia between Tigris and Euphrates and the Nile. They just destroy. They just grab. They just take what they need and go home or dominate. As the Roman dominated Judea for how long? The point I'm trying to get at is the barbarian cultures don't have time. They don't have the sophistication. Let me put the word again into the Greek or the Greco-Roman terms. Sophist. What is a sophist? You are a sophist. If you're watching my program, if I am talking and I am making inquiry, a man of immense curiosity. But when you put philos in Greek, meaning life, the lover of life, philosophy, sophist who is in love with life. Why not? Why can't we have now making this communication form more interesting, more sharing not with all the facts and evidence. They're only facts and evidence by my count, not by any one of you. Education learning is that when this topic comes up, with all the flaws and with all the little crevices that I have not been able to scan and to scout, is you, the participants, who can go out and find out, wow, Paul just mentioned about the cannibalism and the ritual of human sacrifice of Shang, which they have practiced for over 600 years. And the people they capture to be the slave capturers were the people from the dynasty of Zhou that follow after the Shang dynasty. With this cannibalistic religious ritual, human sacrifices is the same in the same shamanic, the shaman-driven culture where the words were created. The oracle bones, the animal bones, they inscribe to it, burn it when it cracks, and that is their trying to make divination. What course do we take? What direction do we go? Can we win this battle? They were no different than any form of a shamanism, be that in Africa, in my beloved Brazil, in the US. But what is interesting, in the Shang dynasty, where we can glorification of the Chinese letters, characters were created that continue on for 3,300 years with the development of calligraphy, better expression, and the advancement from different dynasties, from the Tang dynasty to the Han dynasty, to eventually the Song, the Qing, and present day. That is a rich, rich tradition. But by the same rulers, they had practiced, not just in a couple of years, for 600 plus years, the human sacrifice rituals upon hundreds and thousands body found today were all beheaded. Only with those few bronze urns, archaeologists have found human heads were in boiling and a cooking form. Now, let me put one more alert here. Even the heads were cooked. Were they eaten? Were they consumed? Which I have questioned. I'm sure that when time comes, I'm do this in Portuguese and Spanish and in Chinese, I will get some response from different researchers and people who are with total curiosity. Why am I emphasizing this cannibalism or not of the Shang people? Is because I am admiring one of the most enculturated, one of the most sophisticated cultural development with sound, music, demeanor, the proper hierarchical order of the Chinese, all written by Confucius in the orderly shape about respecting the king and the rank and file of the officials, In likewise, in the family setting, the father, the older brother, the older siblings, and that law and order written out by Confucius is where I think the Zhou people, who were the slave catchers for the Shang, had gone through a great deal of thinking, reflection, and introspection by not wanting to have a kingdom based on the past cruel, demeaning, and murderous practice of the Shang rulers. And that is why I found one of the many sayings of Confucius. By the presence of thus many sayings, Confucius is no different than the era of Homer or the Greek philosophers, when the oral tradition is being said by the orator, and the scribes, the students, the disciples have written down and documenting down. One of the most important of the Confucius saying that I have taken notice is very, very clear. Respect all the gods and demons, but keep a good distance. I think the Zhou rulers, why they were the slave capturers to the Shang rulers and used for sacrifice, again, for hundreds of years, have given them the thinking of humanism, and by not wanting to have the same practice, which by the Zhou rulers were all erroneous. That is why Confucian values his vehemence, and by not become dependent of the external deity. You can see the phrase. He is not saying no, there's no God and no demon. But instead, look into oneself, use your thinking, be reflective, be pensive, be introspective, use your own analysis. The self-cultivation is far richer than just being obedient to a military rank, to the court, to the rulers. And that's why I think what is fascinating, that history by me is no longer something static. Also because we're coming to an era where I have put IT, information technology, plus AI, I put it into the linguistic term in Portuguese called itai. Ita, ITA, is stone. Ai is a Brazilian expression. It's like, and itai. What's next? If we can put this itai, IT, and AI into a question format, I did trademark it or registered itai. It's opening doors. Just before I share with you in 10, 15 minutes ago, I download the same question I have about the Shang dynasty in the use of Claude. Claude and I become a daily buddy. I also use ChatGPT, and I also have used Gemini, but my preference is between ChatGPT and Claude. Seems to be we have a triple verification of sorts. As I put the word totem in English, the phonetic sound is identical to Chinese called tu, teng. Tu is picture, teng is raised. So totem, the linguistic side of the American language, put totem into crediting the Ojibwe tribes. Ojibwe are north of here, Wisconsin to Canada, in this region of the Plains Indians. And so another word, by accident, Kuli Okay, the coolie, for me, born in Shanghai area, have heard enough about the use of coolie. Is a ku li, bitter, hard, tough. Li is labor, written by an arm lifting. But there was origin of the word according to for these search engines, and also the artificial assisted intelligence. They have come into the origin coming out from India. Okay, I'm not here to dispute. It's not about territorial, but everything we see, we perceive is coming out may have a different interpretation. Of course, every Cantonese speaking Chinese can tell you ketchup is Cantonese. Ke is the fruit with the juices. There we go. I have created 2008 when I spent 6 weeks of a self-retreat into the northern region of the Amazon, Brazil, by Rio Negro, in the town called São Gabriel de Cachoeira, where my old pal from my high school, he was in college, Don Song, S-O-N-G, who became the Bispo dos Índios. He became the bishop of the Indians in the region where over 35 language groups were happening in the upper Rio Negro, 70 kilometers south of the equator. And just share my, when I find out Don Songi had, were known to have the Parkinson's, aggressive Parkinson's disease. I had not seen him for over 25 years. I spent 6 weeks humbling down to learn curiosity about the language called Ninkatu in the region. Wanted to make the extra trip to another area, the Tupinamba, and searching in area Maceió, in Pará, also just a simple work when I'm doing joint research R&D, not in a, but it basically an amateurish manner. With Gavin Mancy spoke 1421, and his director Ian Hudson from London, who also speaks fluently Portuguese, and we have a lot in common. And we just found one very simple term called the Muirakitan, Muriquita, Anya. Well, that stone, I just want to make sure that stone, because I'm involving in gemstones, I want to make sure that gemstone is not jade. If it is jade, and then there's another hypothesis of the Mesoamericans, the Mayans, could have taken the stone coming down to the Peruvian region in the Andes and then washed down to the basin in the area where we think they found it was involving, is a amulet involving the quote unquote Amazon women. They only bring in their male partners to the area to mate, and then once they have children, bearing children, the male was sent off. So that is part of the mystery involving this amulet called the Muirakitan. They give to the man, during the time they spent together. So the whole idea is that everybody was sure that is jade. I said, well, wait a minute. I traveled to Guatemala in 1973, when I first finished college, just with the curiosity about jade or jadeite was found in Antigua, in Guatemala. At that time, my father's good friend, best friend, was the region ambassador of Central America based in Guatemala from Taiwan. So I went to the Guatemala. In fact, 73. I walked in the middle of the uprising in Guatemala, but I took off. without telling my aunt, telling me not to go any further than the Guatemala city. And I took a taxi, took me, go to Antigua, falling in love with the city, beautiful town, and get in touch with the gemstones of the Guatemalan. And a few years later, from the Cancun, from the other ventures in the Campeche, where I went into, I bought blue jay, purple jay, green jay, jade that looked like jadeite, and not from the commercial area. And I'm still very much engaged with the Guatemalan area of jade. But going back to this point about trying to find whatever I can find out and try to give what I know of some added meaning. If this Muirakitan, by the way, for those who are in Brazil who are still knowing the location of the Hope Museum in Belém, do me a favor, look for that stone, take a picture, let me know if that stone of what origin. In my 45 years in Brazil, we have never found any jadeite or nephrite. But every day is an eye-opener. Our group, China West, own our North American jade, which is all nephrite. Just came up from one area of Wisconsin in the region where they produce ginseng in Marathon County in the town called Athens. Now there are more nephrites being found, black nephrite, in the state of Montana. Taiwan, maybe one time or another, had produced something similar, the green jade, the green nephrite, like those of New Zealand, but very small quantity. But for the largest part is, again, another period of untold truth. Maybe they don't want to share the truth for many, many reasons, because they don't want people to infringe into their market. 90% on the last 20, 30 years, the Taiwan jade nephrite were all produced from British Columbia in Canada. So just on this subject alone about jade, about Muirakitan in Belém, in the state of Pará. If my friends from Brazil can find this discovery, based on the internet, the speed, the use of AI and IT, we can find out very interestingly what is that stone, an amulet given by the quote-unquote Amazon women tribal groups, Tupinambás, to their male partners during their time of mating. So the story about the Shang dynasty and their cruel practice had affected the development of the Zhou dynasty, which we can share with many of the Chinese. That was probably one of the highest cultural zenith in the Chinese culture. Talk about civility, talk about order, talk about sharing. But in itself, the Zhou dynasty eventually, I don't call it failing, because their generosity by giving their land, sharing land to their siblings, the prince, the lords, the cousins, the in-laws, the outlaws, and giving our land to the point eventually become the multiple states, independent states, who become divisive and forming, resulting of the 7 nations with the warring states, the warring period. But then again, warring period had produced another beautiful era. Where in the world can you find 100 schools of thoughts and ideas, ending with Confucius become one of the most receptive to the rulers? But Confucian values were not accepted by the immediate dominator, the dynasty of Qing. That's what Qing, Xing, China becomes. by my passages, and thanks to the 4+ languages, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, English, Chinese, multiple dialects, and the use of Latin and Greek, at least the parameter I have in languages allow me to search and seek. But instead of looking for the Latin writing today, I just using ChatGPT or Claude. Like today, I love a song called Malagueñas Salerosa. Well, Malagueña, Malaga, no? Europe. No, Malagueña Salerosa was written in Mexico, but with a storytelling about a young girl from Malaga. And my curiosity for years about as I'm speaking myself as a cross-cultural product, I search by way of Claude, hypothesizing my love for the flamenco music. In Spanish, the singer we call cantante, but why is that in the flamenco, the partake, the singer is called cantor, and the same cantor will also use cantor, basically in the Judaic, and all that have part of the mixtures in. Gypsy is almost part phonetic sound to Gypto, Egitto, Gypsy, Egypt. And then the last interesting aspect is talking about the ladies dancing. I've written in Portuguese sapateado, S-A, but in Spanish it's zapateado. And by the count of the rhythm, the 2 steps, 3 steps, and the firm 1 steps are the hoofs of the horses pounding onto the cobblestone roads. And then my imagination of the zapateado are the legs of the Arabian horses, and they even echo by the Claude saluting. Well, they're very complimentary. When I was a youngster, I wrote mangas largas in Brazil. We know as machador in the farms, in the mining area. I love to have my horses because when there's rain, when there's mudslides, we cannot use the vehicles. So it cleared my mind about the manga larga and the machador in the area of Andalusia. So in my next life, I may become a flamenco dancer. Imagination, right? Thinking forward, thinking backward. This is the era that I think nobody can afford to be ignorant anymore. The richness of the itai, IT and AI, is that on that instant of your ignorance, you can get some kind of a result by access to the AI-assisted procurement and let you know a little bit more than what you did not know before. And I'll repeat, the format that we have now, this particular presentation posted into YouTube with multiple languages, on the CC caption, they will become all text. But I will use this text to print it on the first screen into my up and coming future domain. It's www.openbooks.ai. But for now, openbooks.ai is being hosted into Paulyh, PAULYH.ai/openbooks. Instead of paying all these domain names, which I still pay for, I pay for the open books, but I put it behind Paulyh.ai to put it into a preparation grooming stage. Because in the open books, I'm building it like a blockchain. So in this presentation taken by you, you can highlight that one segment, maybe from the second minute, 30 seconds, you can copy and paste. You can add inputs. I know about this, Muirakitan, Paul. I can help you discover what is the content of the mineral of the stones. But what the open books is become also service as a blockchain. All the bits and pieces about Bitcoin and all this electronic use in the coinage. Blockchain is to authentication, verification, not by one, but by the multiple by the audience. If I speak in other terms about Moira Kitan, somebody from Germany can correct me, or from Spain, from Portugal. In fact, the first time I have spent 6 months to find out what the hell is Moira Kitan was written in German with K. And so subsequently, we are decoding, we're deciphering this process of learning, curiosity, interest. From this chat, we may find out more and more about the cannibalism in China or not. We don't know yet. We have no evidence they have consumed the cooked heads. But the beheading of the people and finding heads in the bronze urns were all part of the evidence. And very similar to the Shang dynasty, the Olmec, Toltec, the Mayans, the Aztec also have the human sacrifices, but never about cannibalism that I know of. On the contrary, and I was sharing on the document, the migration through the Bering Straits, when the land were much closer and the ocean were lower, that migration of the Asians into Bering Straits coming all the way down, maybe there was a climatic zone of the Native Americans. None had evidence about cannibalism or human sacrifices. That's why I said only in the Mesoamerica and looking for the flow, the ocean flow. In part of that was part of my viewing the Manila galleons, how the ships had to go up to Japan, pick up the current, and go all the way to Oregon and come down all the way to Mesoamerica, to Acapulco. That's another hypothesis, observation of the Chinese, because the 250,000 men and women were chased out of the Shang dynasty to the coastal region of China. That was another observation. And if there were other colleagues coming in to share and partake, that would be wonderful. And the part I mentioned, the cannibalism that I know of present day, not many, just a few years ago, since the Second World War, or the Japanese, once they started invading China, the American Flying Tiger, the retiring teams based on Burma, and become activated by Chiang Kai-shek's American wife, So Mei Ling, and paid them dearly, maybe with American money, we don't know. They had been pampered, and they have to eat the goddamn New Zealand steak, drink the freaking milk above all other goddamn military. And when they got captured, they were eaten alive in the mountaineer groups in Cambodia, in Thailand. These people eventually had to put the flag of China and America so they cannot be eaten. And their cannibalism in Papua New Guinea. So what I'm talking about, by echoing thoughts about the Tupinambás, about the cannibalism in Brazil region, in the Amazon region, there were 3 sets of migration, which none are equal. And I hope in this part of hypothesis, other will find new passages, will find new crevices. I don't have to be convinced about my theory, but just looking at these few factors, the 250,000 plus Shang people had to exit China to avoid their massacre by the Zhou rulers. And I think this is part of the part of the amazing, wonderful discovery that we can have, more so in the context that we have today, by sharing subject matter, topics, possibilities. Then this will also allow the Chinese researchers to look in further into this kind of a um, exchange we have, and not to forget, during my time with the 1421, Gavin Mansey's book, there were many discoveries by accident or by giving to our group. There were the stone rings, anchors found in the coast of Mexico. And also their the deity or the animal they worship is between the dragon and also the pheasant. And the snake in Chichen Itza, the serpents. And during my time when my wife and I visited Chichen Itza at that about 35, 40 years ago, the local people were showing to me, Paul, have you noticed our people, the Mayans, they have a chin lifted in this angle. And I said, what is the reason? Because they have such worship the spirit of the serpent. When the baby, they dangle an object to make sure their eye will be crossed. So this is not too long ago. These are the facts and evidence other people can research a little bit more and share a little bit more. We have to come to an understanding that is the ultimate mission of peace and harmony. Because we already know the amount of nuclear weapons we have on the hands of the Russians, the Americans, Chinese, Israel, France, England. We have enough nuclear bombs to blast this planet Earth into oblivion. If we cannot engage with civility, and I do wish eventually there will be a constant ecological civilization, unlike the past four civilizations where China has survived because the landscape blocking the two river zones without any intrusion, or less intrusive invaders, nomadic tribes like the Huns, like the Mongols, and like the Turkish people. We have to find a way to have a better understanding of past, and the one that have the richest recording history of since 3,300 years ago of the Shang dynasty. There are much there to be found and learned from the conscience-based culture of the Chinese. Let me repeat one more time. When the missionaries, when the conquistadores, when the Anglo-Americans intrusive forces into India and China, none of them have such awareness of the word conscience. They're only projecting with their Judaic, Abrahamic cultures of the three dominant religions. I added the fourth, and they call it Judaism, Catholicism, Protestantism, and Islamism. None of that have any significance. They just make the Chinese Confucian value, Lao Tzu's teaching, and Buddhist compassionate teaching, all conscience-based, but added the ISM behind. So there's Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism. The only one that is so wise and who himself suspected the Chinese culture can be harmonized with his own Roman Catholicism, which was Matteo Ricci. Again, just by accident. It just so happened I was baptized in the 50s in Macau by Father Minelli from Italy, and by Father Luis Ruiz from Spain. And when Matteo Ricci raised this question about there is possible synthesis between the Chinese value and the Roman Catholic value, he was almost sent back to Italy, to Vatican, by the accusations of the Dominicans. Don't forget, Dominicans were the most brutal, cruel religious group with the Spanish Inquisition, including Tomás Torquemada, another converted Jew, and the Franciscans also. Matteo Ricci had contributed so much in working intelligently and academically and culturally with China, were almost sent back to Italy because not practicing the right evangelization according to the church. There will be so much more research can be done and showing Matteo Ricci's work with the Matteo Ricci Center in Beijing, in plus other areas in Italy or in Macau, and as other literature he had left behind in Guangdong province. So I hope by this presentation, speaking of the Shang dynasty, the possibility of the cannibalism, if not cannibalism, I don't think that's what happened, but the human ritual sacrifices has some very similar patterns with the Mesoamericans. And I hope many of you who can share more, I welcome your critique, I welcome your comment, and I welcome your add-ons. And that is the future of the open books that will not allow any one of us to remain ignorant in any time, in any moment. Thank you.